Over the last few months, I've been seeing more and more talks about a Turo recession. Talks of utilization decreasing, cars sitting for long periods of time, and Turo hosts losing money. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about the truth behind these Turo recession claims, whether or not you should be concerned, and of course, how you can prepare. So let's get started. The last 2 years have created a perfect storm for Turo and car sharing hosts. Car shortages made it difficult to buy a car at an affordable price. Rental shortages made it hard to find a rental car at an affordable price, and stimulus payments made people flush with cash. Pair this with the fact that during the pandemic, people didn't want to fly on airplanes, and so as a result, they rented cars, made it the perfect storm for Turo hosts around the entire country to make a ton of money. Honestly, I've been a Turo host for 5 years. In the last 2 years or so, it has never been a better time to be a host on Turo or any car sharing platform for that matter. But times are changing. Interest rates are rising, companies are letting go their employees, and many people believe that a recession is looming. But the real question is, should you be concerned? Now, in this video, I'm going to be laying out 3 key components that I think that you should keep in mind in the context of peer-to-peer car sharing in this looming Turo recession. The first point is, are we in a Turo recession? We're going to be breaking down this answer, and I'm going to be talking about why I believe we are or are not in a Turo recession and whether or not I believe one is coming. Number 2, we're going to be talking about low demand. What causes it and how can you combat it? And number 3, how can you prepare for a decrease in demand or for a Turo recession if one is in fact looming? First and foremost, let's answer the question of, are we in a Turo recession or are we on the brink of a Turo recession? And I believe that the answer to that question is no. But I do think it is important to acknowledge that on the Turo platform and in car sharing, certain cars will be impacted drastically different than others in the case of a recession. For example, if you have a fleet of high-end luxury cars, your fleet is going to be much more drastically impacted by an economic downturn than somebody that has a fleet of electric cars or of low-end economy cars. Or if you're somebody who rents mainly to local renters who are needing a car to commute, you're going to be much more recession resistant compared to a business model that relies on tourists and travelers. In an economic recession, Turo hosts are going to be impacted drastically differently depending on where they're located, what types of cars they're renting out, as well as their price point. And for me, I defined a Turo recession as a decrease in bookings across the board for different markets, different cars, just an overall decrease in business. And that just simply isn't what I'm currently seeing. I talked to a lot of different hosts throughout the country, and there are a wide variety of different hosts with different cars in different markets that are still doing extremely well. I have 18 cars myself, and I actually had a record month this month. So Turo demand is there, and there may be Turo hosts out there that are seeing a decrease in bookings and thus a decrease in earnings, but I don't believe that this is because of a Turo recession, and I don't believe that Turo is currently experiencing a platform-wide decrease in bookings. So as far as a Turo recession goes, I don't think it's something to be concerned about, at least not right now. But then that of course brings us to the second point of this video, which is if you're somebody who is seeing a decrease in demand and utilization, what exactly could be causing that? I'm not blind or naive to the fact that some Turo hosts are experiencing a decrease in bookings. I talk to hosts all over the place, and as many hosts as I see that are having booming business, I also talk to a lot that are struggling and are having a hard time attracting new guests to their cars. Hosts that say it's been days or weeks since their last booking. They have an empty calendar for August and September, and they've been decreasing their price, and yet their cars still aren't getting rented out. And in my opinion, if you're somebody who's experiencing a decrease in bookings, it's not because of a Turo recession. It's not because of platform-wide oversaturation. It typically can be pinpointed to 3 different things. The first one is the type of car that you have. It is incredibly important to do market research of where you're located or where your fleet's going to be located, and to understand what types of cars are needed in your area and to do the appropriate research before buying that car. Turo as a platform is not oversaturated, but Turo does have certain markets that are oversaturated with certain cars. And if you're somebody who's really struggling to get bookings, I believe that this could be a key problem. Now, there are a few different ways that you can go about doing market research, and we'll quickly talk about them now, but I'm not going to go into depth because it would take me way too long for this video. The first one is to check out CarSync. CarSync is a free tool. I absolutely love it. I talk about it a ton in my videos. They have some really good utilization tools that allows for you to see what local demand is for different types of cars. I highly encourage you to check it out. Another way that I gauge demand that has been kind of a tried and true method is I will go into Turo's website, I will look up my city that I'm wanting to put my cars in. In this example, I'm gonna use Denver, Colorado, and then I will choose a date for a tomorrow pickup. So I'm recording this video on Thursday, July 28th, and I'm going to select the date for Friday, July 29th. And you can see here, you can see where the cars are located in Denver, how many dots there are, what types of cars are available, and this will give you a good idea of what cars are available to rent with a less than 24-hour notice. Then once I see what types of cars and how many of them are roughly available in my area tomorrow, I will then go back to the date selection and I will select a date in that same market for months in advance. So I'm recording this video in July. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna select a date for October. So I'll go October 17th to October 20th and I'll see which cars are available. I'll then scroll through these cars and I'll see what types of cars are available, how they differ from the cars that are available tomorrow, and what the data shows. This is not a foolproof method to show you what type of demand there is in your market, but by looking at cars that are available 3 months from now, you get a pretty good idea of how many cars are listed in the Denver market or in your individual market and at what price point. And then whenever you look at those cars compared to the cars that are available tomorrow, you can get an idea of how many of those cars have been rented out. For example, it's very, very common for there to be 300, 400, 500 cars available 3 months in advance. But if you look for cars that are available with a less than 24-hour notice, sometimes it will be only 10 or 20 cars available. You can do this with a variety of different filters and price points. Like for example, if you were wanting to buy a car that could be listed on Turo for $40 to $50 per day, you can set a filter on the Turo website for $40 to $50 per day pricing. You can then do this exact same thing and you can see how the demand looks for these cars. This will give you a good idea of what types of cars are being rented in that market, which ones aren't being rented, and how many of each type of car there is. This will give you a lot of different insight on which cars you should buy and which ones you should avoid. And believe me, I know that this method isn't foolproof, but it does give you a lot of insight. Another issue could be your price point. If you're pricing your cars way higher than your competitors, you're not going to get bookings, and because of this, it will result in lower utilization. I talk to a lot of hosts that are concerned with low utilization, but then whenever I look at their cars are priced for between $10 and $20 per day higher than everybody else in their market. The reality is with Turo, price point is a huge factor, if not the biggest factor. And if your cars are more expensive than another car of a similar trim, make, and model, then your car isn't going to get rented. And the third reason could be seasonality. The fact is, Turo, like many businesses, is seasonal to a degree. Certain times of the year are busier than others. There is a difference to being slow because of seasonality versus slow because of bad business. And it's important to understand what type of season your market has. Are you busy during the summer, the winter? Are you busy all year round? How does your market react to different seasons and different trends? Based on that information will dictate how your fleet performs throughout the year. Getting familiar with the seasonality of your business is important because Turo is seasonal. So knowing what to expect year after year, month after month, and knowing how to set expectations accordingly is how you're going to end up making Turo more sustainable. Now, with all of this being said, I do acknowledge the fact that as we head into an economic recession, Turo as a whole will probably see a decline in bookings. It's just natural given the economic circumstance. Now, with all of this being said, I do acknowledge that as we as a country head into an economic recession, there is a good chance that Turo will be impacted in some way, shape, or form. And though I don't think that it will be a Turo recession, I do think that we could expect to see a bit of a decline in usage. And though I have talked about this in a lot of other videos, I want to take a brief moment and go over a few points of how you can prepare for this. Now, first and foremost is reevaluating your fleet. I've talked about this hundreds of times on this channel, but I personally am really uncomfortable with the idea of financing a bunch of cars for the sake of Turo. I think financing 1 or 2 is okay, but once you get to the point where you're over leveraged with debt in your Turo fleet, I think it's really risky. And right now, car prices are still really high, and if you're somebody that has a lot of financed cars, it may be a good time to look at which cars you could offload, sell those cars, and then use the cash that you make from that sale in order to buy some cash cars. Secondly is to know your market. Make sure that you're keeping an eye on what your market needs, what cars are oversaturated, which ones are underserved, and to know which price you should be pricing your cars at. Doing market research doesn't have to be complicated, and it can be something that you do on a weekly or even monthly basis. And of course, you can use the method that I mentioned earlier where you compare different dates and look at the different cars that are available. And of course, the third and final tip is diversification. Diversification is always a great thing, not only within your fleet, but also within your different income streams. This is something that I've talked about a ton on this channel ever since I started YouTube. I think that diversifying your income is one of the best things that you can do, especially in times of economic uncertainty. As much as I love Turo and as much as I think it's one of the best side hustles out there, I personally would never rely on Turo for 100% of my income. You should be proactively not only diversifying the types of cars you rent out, as well as the price points that you rent them out at, but you should also be diversifying your personal income as well. That way, if Turo does see a decrease in bookings, you're still financially fine. At the end of the day, I don't think that we're headed into a Turo recession, but I do think that as the economy heads into a recession, we may see a decline in bookings across the board on Turo. And I think that this decline will affect people very differently depending on where they're located and which cars they rent out. But regardless of your fleet size, fleet type, and fleet location, the different tips and tricks that I've outlined in this video should help you increase your bookings in the case that a recession does occur. But with that being said, you guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, comments, if you have anything to add, I would love to hear it. So make sure to leave a comment down below. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit the notification bell. And I'll see you guys in the next video.